Okay, it is time to get to what I'm sure most of us have all been waiting for, which is getting into applying materials to our models, because materials are absolutely what make these models go from just looking like little foam core basic models to what I think can be something really realistic and really great. So in this video, we're going to look at the basics of applying a material, the absolute basics, and we're just going to expand from here. So I'm going to try to cover as much as I possibly can about everything related to materials this week so that you can explore and experiment with and have questions to ask. But we're going to start with just the basics. So first things first, I'm going to make a rectangle. So I do my little Shift-R shortcut and hit S for select, double click this, hit G to make it a group, double click it to open it up, and P for push pull. We're just going to start with a cube here and we're going to apply some materials to that. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. Now, this is the other major difference between PC and Mac. And while I personally think that Mac, at first I thought that working on a Mac was a lot more difficult when it came to materials. I now think it's a little bit harder to grasp initially, but I think that ultimately it also has some of its own benefits. But I think that if you're working on a PC, it's going to be a little bit more intuitive than it is going to be if you're working on a Mac. So what I'm going to be doing is working on a Mac, but I have screen captured several of the PC material windows to show you the differences. So what I'm going to do to get my materials palette up is I'm going to hit my B for bucket. And I recommend, as you start modeling, you might want to start thinking about applying some of your materials right away as you're going, because you don't necessarily always have to wait till the very end. In the beginning, I would stick with some of the stuff that's within the model, but I would also recommend, as you move on, in order to make a SketchUp model really dynamic and really interesting, you're almost always going to have to bring in most of your own colors. And I'm sorry, most of your own colors and materials. Or just materials, I should say. So this is what it looks like when you open up your materials palette on a Mac. This is what it looks like when you open it up on a PC. So on a PC, it's a little simpler. If you don't have this dialog box down below and you just have a smaller window, you're going to want to hit this expand button here, right here. Okay? So this is your select tab, and this is your pull down that's going to allow you to select what it is you want to select, and you'll see that you've got, it's all the same on a Mac in terms of what you actually have access to, but it looks a little different. So this is the basic interface for a PC. All right, so I'm back in my SketchUp file and I'm working on my Mac. If you're working on a Mac, what you'll notice is you have your color wheel, you've got these sliders, you've got an actual image that's got your spectrum, and you can import images into this. You've got your like really basic crayon colors, and then here's where you've got your pull down options for all the different things that you can apply. It's a little, the reason it was a little confusing to me at first is because these look like your editors, and you can get a little confused with editing. We're not going to edit just yet. But what we are going to do is we're going to start with some basic material applications. So in order to get your material to actually apply, you click on this image that looks like an old-fashioned brick. And here's where you can choose what your colors are. So let's go with something really simple to start with. I'm going to just click on my bricks and cladding. So you can see I've got some very basic bricks here. If I'm working on my PC, let me go ahead and pull this in here. If I'm working on my PC, I'm going to click on this little button, I'm going to pull it down, and you'll see your bricks and cladding in there. Okay? So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to select a tool. I'm going to select a material by clicking on it, and I automatically have a paint bucket already show up, and I can now just click once on that group of that 3D box, and it's going to apply those bricks uniformly all the way across the entire thing. Pretty simple. Let's make another rectangle here. And let's do some other things with materials. That is the most basic way you can apply a material. So I'm going to go to my S for select, double click, G to group, double click to open, P to push pull, and bring that up to match to that one. And I'm going to hit S to select and close that down. Let's try something else. Let's go with something translucent. So if I go to my translucents, I've got all of these options here. So I'm going to click on, let's click on this safety glass. So I click on that, and you'll notice now I've got a translucent box, right? Again, pretty simple. So you can, as you go, select different things, like maybe I want to make this into water, solid. Maybe I want to go into my metal and choose a metal texture and make this like the safety metal, or whatever we call that. And one thing that you'll notice now is that if you click on your home key right here, this is going to show you all the tools, all the materials that you've applied in your model. If I'm working on a PC, it looks like this. Here's my home button. So the home button shows you what you already have in your model. Every time I apply, whoops, this is not what I want to bring up. Every time I apply a material, that material stays in the model until I get rid of it. So I have all of these colors originally because these were the colors that were assigned to my scale figure in clothes and hair and all of that. So these basic colors are all still within the model because they were applied once. So if I go back to a new material, like let's go with material symbols here to just try something new, and I apply this sketchy stone texture to this shape, and then I go back to my home, you'll notice that brick is still there. So I can go back to my brick if I decide I like that better, and I can reapply it without having to find it again. So it's kind of a nice way to keep track of what you've got that you've already used. Eventually we'll get into purging textures, but not just yet. Okay, so let's get a little bit more complex here. And this is just a little bit more complex. So I'm going to make another rectangle. I'm going to select it. I'm going to group it. I'm going to double click to open it up, and I'm going to push pull it. So what I've been doing typically up to this point is I have been applying a texture to the entire group while the group is closed. And that applies the texture on every face all the way around. Now in some cases, I might not want the entire thing to be that material. I might want to offset here. So I hit O for offset, and I double click and bring that in, and then I push pull this down like this. I might want just one face to be brick. So I can click on the material I want to select. So I just select that material, and then I hit my B for bucket and apply it to that face. And I'm just going to go around and apply it to every face. But I might want the top to be something else. So I might want the top to just be a simple gray, just to kind of indicate that it's the mortar that they've put all the way around the top. Now I can go back in by clicking on my home key and clicking on that material, the brick, and selecting the brick again, and I can click from face to face. Okay? Now I can choose something else. Let's go with vegetation here. Click on vegetation, and I'm going to go with just a simple kind of like graphic vegetation pattern. Click on that. Space. This is kind of a basic way to edit. So when I click on my rectangle tool, I can now draw a face on just this front face like this, and I can make this something different. And just for the sake of the conversation here, I'm just going to choose something completely different, and I'm going to apply it just to that face there. And then I'm going to right click and I'm going to close. Now this is very unrealistic looking, but this is just to show you that you can actually apply materials purely by face and not to the entire group. So that's pretty important to know. So this is the pure, bare bones basics of materials. In our next video, we're going to get a little bit into how to start editing these in a very simple and a very pure way.